Welcome. Tonight's story is a quiet descent, a slow unravelling into something old and listening. You've just inherited your late uncle's estate, deep in the Appalachian mountains. The house is weathered, crooked, silent, but not empty. Among the relics left behind is a toy monkey, one that claps its cymbals when no one is watching, and it's counting. Locals say it once belonged to a preacher who could make crowds cry out with just his voice, until his voice went quiet, and something else kept speaking. Now each night the monkey claps, and soon it won't be clapping alone. Turn down the lights, put your phone away, and listen closely to The Monkey Only Claps When You're Alone. The drive-in. They say the fog doesn't move here. It hovers, as if the mountains themselves are exhaling but never breathing back in. By the time I passed the broken sign for a place called Pine Bethel, the two-lane road had twisted itself into something more snake than street. No towns for 30 miles, just trees, damp and leaned in like they were listening. The old map Uncle Raymond left in a file marked private told me the last turn-off would be a gravel road with a black mailbox and no number. I passed it twice before realizing it wasn't abandoned, just swallowed. The wheels of the U-Haul screamed against the rocks. Branches tapped the windows like fingers on a coffin lid. 20 minutes up that road, no lights, no radio signal, I reached the house, or what was left of it. It wasn't quite a cabin, not quite a house either. The structure slumped as though it remembered being grander once, maybe when the mountains still respected it. White paint peeled back in curly ribbons. Every window had curtains, red floral, too cheery for their own good, and all of them drawn. Something about that made me pause. The windows felt shy, or ashamed. The key Raymond left in the envelope worked. That was the first surprise. The second came when I walked into the foyer and felt warmer air inside than out. No heater, no fire, just warmth, as though the house had been waiting. It smelled like cedar and dust, and something faint metallic like rust from old blood. Most of the furniture was covered in sheets, the kind you'd use to hide the shape of something, not to protect it. I left most of them alone, though a framed picture on the wall caught my eye. It was Raymond, maybe in his 30s, wearing a preacher's collar. He never mentioned church in the letters. Then again, he rarely mentioned anything at all. He used to write me postcards from strange places, salt churches in Utah, abandoned convents in Georgia. Preaching to ghosts, he said once. I thought it was a joke. Turns out it wasn't. The monkey was in the study. I found it by accident while looking for the breaker box. The room had no light except from the window, which framed a grey patch of mountain sky. The monkey sat on a table, draped in yellowed lace, beside a worn Bible and a jar of dried flowers. It was one of those old wind-up toys. Brass cymbals in its tiny hands, patched red vest, glass eyes too wide for its face. Its mouth curled into a forced grin, one too permanent to be joy. I had the irrational thought that it looked surprised to see me. Beside it lay a note. Only 3 words, written in my uncle's crooked hand. Don't watch it. The bedroom was upstairs and still made. 1 bed, 1 lamp. 1 large mirror nailed directly across from the bed. I draped a blanket over the mirror before sleeping. There's something indecent about watching yourself sleep, even accidentally. The first night I heard the clapping. It was faint. 2 metallic smacks, maybe 3 seconds apart. Then silence. I sat up. Nothing moved. The house was still. The second night, the same thing. The third night, I left my phone's camera recording in the study. In the footage, the room stays still for hours. Then, precisely at 3:11 a.m., the monkey's arms jerk upward. The cymbals come together. Clap, pause, clap, pause, clap, 3 claps. Then the monkey tips backward on its own, settles back into its original posture. Its glass eyes stare straight into the lens. I watched it 3 times. Each time the hairs on my arms rose before the sound even started. My chest got tight like something was pressing its knuckles into the center of it. When I checked the monkey again, I noticed something that hadn't been there before. A chalk mark on the table beside it. A single white line, about 1 inch long. On the 4th night it clapped twice, then paused, then once. Another line. This time there were 2. 2 lines side by side. Each morning I erased them. Each night new ones returned. I went to town on the 5th day. Pine Bethel wasn't on any map, but it had a post office, a gas station, and a diner that still took cash only. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone else is dead. I asked the waitress about the house. She paused pouring coffee and squinted at me. "Raymond Coyle's place?" "Yes," I said. "I'm his nephew." She nodded slowly. "Preacher Raymond. Real good at talking. Real bad at shutting up." When I asked her what she meant, she just muttered, "Should have let the revival end," and went back to filling salt shakers. The cashier at the general store was more direct. "You find the monkey yet?" he asked, eyes narrowed. I froze. "What?" "The clapping one, with the bugged eyes, was his favourite. Brought it everywhere." "He brought it? Preaching?" "Hell yes, called it Gabriel's bell, claimed the monkey clapped when the Lord was near." He paused. "Funny thing is, it never clapped in church, only after. Alone, always alone." He bagged my things and leaned in. There were 27 claps before the fire. That night I didn't sleep. I left the monkey in the attic, locked the door behind me. At 3:11 a.m. the attic door opened on its own. The next morning I found it back in the study. 5 chalk lines this time, 1 crossed, like tally marks. On the 7th night I couldn't help it. I waited behind the study door, cracked it just enough to see inside but not be seen. At 3:11 a.m. nothing moved. The monkey sat still. At 3:13 I gave up, turned away, and that's when I heard it. Clap. I spun back around. Stillness. The monkey's arms down. Cymbals quiet. Another chalk line appeared. Today's the 8th day. There are 8 lines now, 7 upright, 1 crossed. I don't know what it's counting to. But tonight I'm not going to blink, not going to move. I'll watch, no matter what. Twist, end of chapter 1. I made it through the night. The monkey never moved. I never looked away. At sunrise, I allowed myself a breath, turned to leave, and found a chalkboard nailed to the back of the door. I hadn't seen it before. It wasn't there before. On it, scrawled in thick white strokes, were 3 words: "You watched wrong." And beneath them, 26 tallies, 1 left uncrossed. Chapter 2. 26 crosses. Morning came grey and spiteful. I didn't sleep, not in the traditional sense. I sat slumped in the upstairs hall, knees aching from the cold floorboards, eyes locked on the chalkboard that hadn't been there before. You watched wrong. The letters scratched deep. The chalk felt more like gouges than markings. Beneath those words, 26 white tally marks. 1 left. 1 final line yet to be crossed. The monkey didn't clap that night, not while I watched. But I don't think that was relief. It was restraint. I left the chalkboard untouched. It felt like moving it would provoke something, or worse, acknowledge it. Downstairs, the study had changed. Subtle things. The monkey now sat on the floor, facing the wall. The Bible next to it was open, though I was sure it had been closed before. The pages had curled from damp, as though it had been left near fire and water at once. Someone had underlined a passage in thick black pencil. "For now we see through a glass darkly." I read it aloud before realizing I was whispering, and not to myself. I returned to Pine Bethel the next morning, more out of desperation than curiosity. I wanted someone else to say they'd seen the monkey move. I wanted anyone to make it less real by calling me crazy. The librarian was old. That kind of old that makes you wonder if they've ever not been behind the counter. Her name tag said Miss Tilda. She watched me like a dog at a screen door. "Preacher Raymond's boy?" she asked as I walked in. "Nephew," I corrected. "Same thing," she said. "Blood doesn't always come through the skin." I asked her about the revival, the one people in town wouldn't talk about directly. She didn't flinch. "Sermons out in the woods," she said. "No cross, no altar. Just people and fire and that little toy of his. He'd wind it up before every sermon. Said it marked how many souls were listening true. Most folk came to see if it would clap." "Did it?" I asked. She stared down the bridge of her nose at me. "Every night, but never when watched." I nodded. She leaned in. "They say the revival didn't end. It paused, waiting for the last sound, waiting for the 27th. Back at the house, I went to the attic. I don't know what drew me there. Maybe the fact that it hadn't been open until that 7th night. Maybe because that's where I'd put the monkey and it had left on its own. The door groaned as I opened it. The air inside tasted different, sharp, like copper and something burnt. Dust in ribbons through the beams, particles floating in slow circles like they couldn't find the way down. At the far end of the attic, under a tarp, something large waited. I pulled it back. A wooden pulpit, cobbled together from what looked like barnwood and coffin pieces. Nailed scripture clippings adorned the front, torn, water-stained, words missing. Most were from Revelations. One in particular was pinned dead center, and the seventh angel sounded. Beside the pulpit sat a crate. Inside it I found a dozen notebooks. Handwritten. Preacher Raymond's handwriting, shaky and sprawling. Pages filled with sermon titles. The voice between breaths. When silence betrays. Clap if you're listening. One was titled simply 27. That was the only one written in pencil instead of ink. Like even Raymond had doubts about putting it down permanently. The pages were filled with countdowns, numbers, names, dates I didn't recognize, but all crossed out except for one. Tomorrow's date. I didn't eat that day. Just drank water from the rusty tap and read the notebook until my eyes burned. Raymond had written, "Each clap is a count. Each tally a binding. When the 27th sounds, the listener is chosen." Then later, "The monkey doesn't clap for joy. It claps for memory. It claps for sin. And it claps only when you're alone, because that's when your ears are most honest." And further down, "Don't watch for it. Listen. Seeing is a lie. Hearing is confession." That night I didn't set up the camera. I didn't watch. I lay in bed with the mirror uncovered, facing the door. I let my eyes stay closed. At 3:11 a.m. the house exhaled. The monkey clapped. Once, twice, a third time. I opened my eyes but didn't rise. I didn't move. In the mirror I saw something behind me. Not in the room, only in the reflection. It wore Raymond's face, but younger. Mouth too wide. Grinning, but the eyes wept. Not water, ash. It leaned close to my reflection and whispered, "One left." I woke at dawn. Whether I had actually slept, I couldn't say. I checked the chalkboard. The 27th tally had been drawn. Still uncrossed. But a new message was written beneath. "You heard wrong." I'm starting to believe the monkey isn't counting down. It's counting up. And when it reaches 27, something isn't going to end. Something is going to begin. Something that was promised in a sermon no one remembered hearing. Not with their eyes, not with their ears, but somewhere deeper. Here is chapter 3 of The Monkey Only Claps When You're Alone. The preacher's voice. There are some sounds that don't belong to the world. They pass through it. They pass through you. Raymond's voice was like that. Half whisper, half thunder. It didn't echo in the room. It echoed in your ribs. And even now, with him 10 years dead, I heard him. Not in memory. Not in guilt. In the walls. The mirror in my bedroom showed nothing that morning. Just me. Hollow-eyed, hands trembling like leaves trying not to fall. But I didn't trust mirrors anymore. Not after last night. I kept catching movement in the reflection that wasn't in the room. Things too quick to name, too familiar to ignore. The 27th tally still waited on the chalkboard, uncrossed. Something had changed. The whole house seemed to lean a little more to one side. Door frames weren't square anymore. Paint peeled in new places, revealing symbols scratched beneath. The kind of symbols that felt older than the wood they lived in. Circles and lines, eyes without pupils, triangles inside open palms. I found a second monkey. This one in the root cellar, buried beneath a pile of hymnals wrapped in burlap. It was broken, mouth missing, one symbol crushed like it had been bitten. But its glass eyes were identical, too wide, too knowing. No note this time. Just a line of white chalk scrawled across the cellar wall. He gave it to them. I visited the church ruins that afternoon. Miss Tilda told me where to find them, a field behind the diner past the tree line where no animals ever went. Only the revival happened there, she said, and only once. It wasn't a proper church, just a stone circle now, blackened by old fire. In the centre stood a crude wooden cross, its arms drooping like it had been crucified too. Beneath it, a pile of scorched hymn books and charred plastic eyes. Monkey eyes. I sat there for a long time, listening. Not to the wind, not to the birds. Something else, something breathing. It wasn't coming from the woods. It was coming from under the ground. That night, I made a decision. If I was the last name in that notebook, if tomorrow's date meant what I thought it did, then I needed to hear the full sermon. The one Raymond wrote in pencil. The one called 27. The monkey sat in the study again, back on the lace-covered table. Chalk tollies still there. 27 now. the last still open. Symbols slightly raised, like it was preparing to strike but waiting for permission. I read the sermon out loud. It wasn't long, it was just one sentence, over and over. When the listener is ready, the preacher returns through the ears of the willing. I must have read it 20 times. On the 27th, I blacked out. I woke in the attic, face down, cheek against the dusty floorboards. Blood on the wood. Mine. Something had been written beside me. You are willing. I screamed, not out of fear, but because the voice that came out wasn't mine. It was deeper, echoed from my chest like I had a second throat, like something else had spoken through me. I clamped my hands over my mouth and wept. It's not clapping anymore. It's knocking. Once, then twice. Then a long silence. Each night now the monkey moves on its own. I've found it on the stairs, in the kitchen sink, in my bed, beside my head, each time with another chalk mark. The tallies have looped 27 again, but this time they're red, not chalk. Paint, blood, the Bible pages are now blank, all but one. The verse is gone, and in its place a hand-drawn picture. The monkey, its symbols raised, but this time its mouth is open wider than humanly possible, like it's howling, like it's consuming. Tonight is the second cycle's final clap. I don't know what happens when the red tally is crossed. I'm scared it's not a mark of progress. It's a gate, a trigger, a resurrection. Twist. At 3:11 a.m. I lay in bed, the monkey nowhere in sight. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to see, didn't want to hear, but it came anyway. Clap! Clap! And then, a fourth clap. I bolted upright. That's not the pattern. That's not what it's supposed to do. I ran downstairs. The study was empty, the monkey gone. But the Bible had one final note scribbled in the margin. You're not the listener. You're the echo. Chapter 4. The echo doesn't choose. By morning the house no longer pretended to be still. The walls flexed and groaned like lungs expanding. Floorboards warped in spirals. Cold drafts blew from corners that hadn't existed the day before. There was a new crack running down the hallway ceiling, jagged and pulsing faintly, like a vein. I hadn't slept. Not really. I closed my eyes and drifted for minutes at a time, but something always stirred me. Sometimes a whisper. Sometimes the sense that someone had just moved out of my field of vision. And sometimes the sound of small cymbals clinking together gently, like an impatient child calling for attention. The monkey was gone. Vanished. But the knocking had returned. It wasn't coming from any one room. It was everywhere. In the walls, in the cabinets, in the pipes. Sometimes in my own skull, echoing in time with my heartbeat. Knock. Knock. Then silence so thick it filled the mouth like cotton. The red tally marks had returned to the attic, all 27 of them crossed, but now they were joined by something else, a rough sketch drawn in greasy, dark red wax along the wall beneath the pulpit. It showed a crowd of people standing around a preacher. The people were faceless. The preacher's mouth was open wide, and from that mouth monkeys poured out, not dozens, hundreds, each with symbols raised, all mid-clap. I tried to leave. Packed a bag, started the U-Haul, drove 3 minutes down the gravel road, but the road never ended. No turns, no towns, just trees repeating in uncanny rhythm. Same tree, same branch snapped at the same angle. Time began to break down. My GPS spun wildly. The same crow circled above me 3 times, pausing on the third loop to look directly through the windshield. I turned around. It took me 2 minutes to return to the house. Or so I thought. The clock on the wall said it had been 6 hours. I didn't go back inside right away. I stood in the driveway, staring up at the second-story window. My bedroom. Someone was standing there, not moving, not waving, just watching. It was me, or something that wore my face. It tilted its head as I tilted mine, but then it smiled. I did not. Inside, the monkey waited on my bed. Its hands were wrapped in gauze. A Bible verse had been stitched into the cloth, handwritten in needle and black thread. And there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. I tried to unwrap the hands to see if the symbols had changed, but they were fused shut, rusted, melted as if from fire. Instead of chalk tallies, the wall now bore lines carved deep with something sharp. They didn't count in rows anymore. They spiraled outward, like ripples, like a sound spreading. That night, I recorded everything. Audio only, no video. I didn't want to see again. Not after the mirror, not after the reflection spoke in my voice and said, "You're not supposed to be awake yet." At 3:11 a.m. the recording caught the sound of something breathing, shallow at first, then faster. Then clap, 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 knock, knock. Then the sound of something walking, small, padded feet, but not animal, followed by my own voice, clear and calm, saying, "I accept." I never said that. When I woke, my lips were chapped, bleeding, my throat raw as though I'd spoken for hours. I checked the study. The monkey was back on the table, symbols wide apart, its head tilted slightly up. Looking at the ceiling? No, listening. The floorboards above creaked, even though no one was there. Then, clap! Just once, and my ears rang like a fire alarm. I returned to the cellar. The broken monkey still sat in the crate, but now its mouth was wide open again. Something small had been placed inside it. A human tooth, not child-sized, mine. I reached up and felt along the back of my gums, one molar missing. No pain, just absence, like it had never belonged to me in the first place. I've stopped dreaming. Now when I close my eyes, I go somewhere. A chapel made of smoke and bone. No pews, just mirrors, thousands of them, each one reflecting a different version of me, older, younger, eyeless, stitched, screaming. And in the centre of the chapel, on a pulpit shaped like a rib cage, the monkey stands with its arms raised, waiting, counting, listening. I understand now. The clapping isn't the curse, it's the summons. Every echo of it reaches someone, somewhere. And each of us, each listener, is just a chamber in a growing cathedral of sound. Twist, Chapter 4. Tonight, I smashed the monkey. Took a hammer and brought it down again and again until its face caved in, symbols bent, fur torn. I buried it deep in the woods, beneath the tree line where the air stops moving. Then I came back. At 3:11 a.m. I sat in the study, alone, smiling, waiting. Clap. Right behind me I turned slowly. On the chair sat the broken monkey, restored. Its eyes locked on mine. And in my own voice it whispered, "I only clap when you're alone, but you're not alone anymore." Chapter 5. Whispers behind drywall. I didn't call the police. What could I even report? A wind-up toy is stalking me. That kind of thing gets you put away, or worse, ignored. I sat at the kitchen table until the sun came up. The monkey, the same one I'd smashed and buried, sat across from me in one of the chairs. Its symbols rested on the table, hands loose like it had just finished clapping. Its mouth was open wider than before. Or maybe that was just how the light hit it. I didn't remember the teeth being so defined. I didn't touch it, didn't speak, just waited to see if it would move. It didn't, but the pipes behind the walls did. I'd always thought the plumbing in this house was ancient, maybe copper or iron, hissing with temperature changes. But now I'm not so sure, because the noises were too clear. Not clanging, not settling, whispers, voices. I pulled one of the drywall panels off the upstairs hallway. It didn't take much, just a screwdriver and the flat end of a hammer. Raymond never bothered insulating the house properly. The wall gave easily. Inside was a cavity no more than 8 inches deep. And there, nailed to the studs, was a child's drawing. Crayons on yellowed paper. Stick figures, one tall in black, several smaller in red. The tall one had no face, just a white circle. But every small one had scribbled out heads, like someone had tried to erase them by stabbing. In the corner, written backward, was one word: listener. I searched the rest of the house, every wall cavity, every hidden crawl space. In the linen closet behind a loose plank, an old cassette recorder wrapped in cloth. I dusted it off and pressed play. At first, just static. Then, "He only claps when he's alone," came Raymond's voice. Hoarse, afraid, a pause. "If you hear it, really hear it, it means he knows you now, that you listened, that you let him in." More static, then something new. My voice, not recorded from any past moment, not a voicemail, not a memory. It was me reading the passage from the red thread-wrapped Bible, and there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. I dropped the recorder. It kept playing. The monkeys clapping, slow, deliberate, clear. And then, a voice not mine, whispering, "You're already on the inside." I visited Miss Tilda again. She met me at the door this time before I even got out of the truck, as if she'd been waiting. "You found the cellar," she said, not a question. I nodded. "You let it hear you." I asked her what she meant, what Raymond had done, what any of this was. She didn't flinch. She said, Raymond wasn't just a preacher. He was a collector, not of things, of silence. He thought there were places in the soul where noise couldn't reach, where guilt could hide. The monkey, that was his tool, to find the cracks. She paused. Her voice dropped, but something heard him listening, something deeper than silence. I asked her what it was. Her eyes glistened, and for the first time she looked like she regretted speaking. I think it used to be a man, she said. Someone who was left alone too long, who started to echo instead of speak. She looked down, and now it wants us to echo too. That night I bolted the attic shut. I locked every door, left all the lights on, and then I sat in the hallway with my back against the wall and my phone recording in my lap. I didn't want to sleep. I wasn't sure I could even blink without losing time. At 3:11 a.m., the light above me flickered, and the door to my bedroom creaked open. From the inside! No footsteps, no sound, just the slow yawning of wood against wood. I rose, entered. The bed was untouched, but the mirror I'd covered with a blanket weeks ago was bare again. The reflection showed my room perfectly, except for the man standing behind me. I turned fast, nothing there, but when I looked back in the mirror, he was still visible, closer. His mouth moved, but I heard nothing. No, that's not right. I felt it. Inside my ears. A pressure like altitude sickness, like the air popping, but without release. Then, clap, louder than ever before. Like a gunshot. The light bulb burst. I dropped to my knees, ears bleeding. In the hallway, when I finally crawled out, the monkey sat at the top of the stairs, but now its symbols were gone, and in their place it held two objects, my house keys, and a match, one of Raymond's old revival matches, black-tipped, paper-thin. Its face had changed, no longer frozen in that cartoonish smile. Now its mouth was flat, open slightly, like it was breathing. I tried to throw it out again, drove 20 miles down to the river, tossed it in, watched it sink, felt relief for the first time in days. I returned home. Hours passed, silence, no whispering, no knocking, no clapping. And then I walked into my kitchen. The monkey was sitting on the counter, dripping wet, holding a cassette recorder. I pressed play. It was my voice, quiet, steady, and terrified. I think I'm the monkey now. Chapter 6. The Things You Don't Hear. There's a moment in every nightmare when you realize you're not asleep. That's when it becomes real. And now, I don't think I've been awake in days. I haven't slept either. Not really. Just drifted into blackout pockets of time where hours go missing and I come to standing in different rooms, my hands wet, my ears ringing, the monkey sitting closer each time. I've taken to carrying a knife. I don't know what for. Not against the monkey. That thing doesn't bleed, but maybe to remind myself I can still hold something sharp, something real, something human. The matches Raymond left, revival matches, were all gone, every last one. In their place, the matchbox now held teeth, 6, human, worn flat and brown, not mine, not yet. I went back to the notebook, the one titled 27. There were pages I hadn't seen before, or maybe pages that hadn't been there. I'm past pretending time works the same in this house as it does elsewhere. The new entries weren't sermons, they were logs, observations. Day 21, it only moves when I'm not looking, but I hear the echoes anyway. They get louder if I write. Day 24, claps come from the walls now, not from the monkey. I think it was never the source, just the microphone. Day 26, when you begin to understand the sound, it stops being sound. It becomes permission. That page was stained with blood. The final entry. Day 27, I heard my own voice last night, but it was saying things I hadn't said yet. It told me to bury the monkey. It told me to stop writing. So I kept going. I kept listening. And then it clapped from inside my chest. That's where the writing stopped, except for a single line scribbled in the margin. The first clap is not the beginning. It's the end of silence. I thought about fire again. Gasoline, matches, but I'd tried that. The monkey always came back. So I did something worse. I locked it in the freezer. Metal box, thick, heavy, no light, no air. I wedged it in tight and left it humming. Then I left the house, went into town, stayed at a motel, room 14. No mirrors, no carpet, just a bed bolted to the floor and a tiny desk with a Gideon Bible missing most of Revelations. For the first time in weeks, I tried to breathe. I lasted one night, because at 3:11 a.m. I woke to the sound of a cassette recorder playing under my bed. I dragged it out. Same machine, same tape. This time the voice wasn't mine. It was Raymond, softer than I remembered, more calm. "You can leave the house, but the echo stays with you. You brought it into your bones." Then the clapping again. Slow, louder, closer. I dropped the recorder and fled. Back home, the freezer was open. The monkey gone. In its place, wedged into the frost, was a note folded 3 times. Inside, a photograph. Black and white, grainy. A church gathering. Maybe a tent revival. A crowd of 30 or 40. Raymond stands near the front, holding the monkey in the air. Everyone is clapping, except one figure in the back. A boy, standing alone. Hands covering his ears. His face turned halfway toward the camera. And it's me. I went back to the church ruins. I needed answers. The air there was heavy. No wind. No insects. Just this pressure behind the eyes, like something was pressing on my brain through my skull. I stood in the middle of the fire-blackened ring and whispered, "Why me?" The earth answered. With one sound, clap. I fell to my knees. Not from fear, from recognition. It wasn't the monkey. It was me. I remembered something then. A sermon. Raymond had brought me to one when I was 10. I hadn't thought of it in years. We'd been travelling through Kentucky, on the road, just the 2 of us. He said we were going to see real faith. I remember the heat, the shouting, the way the monkey sat perfectly still on the pulpit until Raymond started preaching. And then, behind my back, clap, clap, clap. I had told myself it was just coincidence. Now I know better. Raymond brought me there because the monkey chose me. I was the only one who didn't clap, the only one who covered his ears, the only one who didn't listen. And that made me special, because now it wants to be heard, and it wants me to hear it. I went down to the cellar tonight. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I could find the second monkey, the broken one. Maybe I just needed to feel like I had a choice again. But it wasn't there. The crate was gone. The room was bare, except for a new drawing on the wall. Fresh crayon, still soft. It showed a single figure, me, holding a monkey, my eyes scratched out, symbols nailed to my hands, and underneath written in shaking letters, "The monkey doesn't clap anymore. You do." Chapter 7. The House Remembers. I started boarding up the windows, not out of fear that something might get in, but because I couldn't stand the idea of something watching me from outside anymore. The monkey hasn't moved in 3 nights. That should make me feel safe. It doesn't. It just means it's waiting for something. Or worse, I am. I've been recording everything now, not just the late hours, all of it. Audio logs, notes on the walls, scratches on the floor. Wherever the monkey appears, I write it down. I photograph it, timestamp it. Every morning I wake up and find something different. New tally marks etched into surfaces I never touched. Drawings left in soot on the bathroom mirror. Yesterday, a new phrase appeared in the dust on the living room TV screen. "You're doing it wrong." Doing what wrong? Running, listening, living? I checked the tapes again, played the footage from 3:11 a.m. last night. The audio was quiet for 2 minutes. Then, very faintly in the background, my own voice, soft, shaky, saying, "Don't stop clapping." The problem is, I didn't say that. I was asleep. I drove back to the motel again, just to get out. Not to sleep. That's not even a goal anymore. I needed to see the world without the house in it. But I didn't make it 5 miles before the fuel light blinked red. I'd just filled the tank yesterday. I pulled over to the side of the road and opened the hood. Inside, tucked beneath the battery cables, was the monkey. Grimy, silent, symbols loose at its sides, just sitting there like it had been hiding, listening. I took it out with shaking hands, set it in the gravel, and drove off without it. I didn't look back. But later, after I finally got back into the house, I found it again, sitting on my pillow, holding a pair of clapping hands made from twigs and dental floss. I'm not sure if I'm hallucinating anymore, not in the clinical sense, more like the house itself is remembering things I never did. This morning, the kitchen smelled like burnt meat. In the sink was a cast-iron pan with grease in it, still hot, and next to it, a plate with a single bite taken out of something I don't recognize. I haven't eaten in days. I looked back at the footage from that night. At 2:47 a.m., I enter the kitchen. I cook, I eat, I smile, but I don't remember any of it. And when I turn to leave in the video, I'm holding the monkey. Its symbols are raised, and it's clapping once every 5 seconds, not making a sound, just going through the motions, like a rehearsal. I called a friend, someone I haven't spoken to in years, Mark, from college. He was the kind of guy who thought everything had a rational explanation, EMF waves, carbon monoxide leaks, pareidolia, whatever. I told him the bare bones of it, not about the monkey exactly, just the inheritance, the strange noises, the gaps in memory. He didn't laugh. He said, "You need to get out. You've been isolated too long. That house is changing your perception." I asked him to come see it for himself. He agreed. He's driving up tomorrow. Tonight is quiet. No footsteps, no whispers, no claps. The monkey is gone again. But I still feel like I'm not alone, that something is behind me when I'm not looking. I tested it. I sat in a chair in the center of the living room, back straight, camera behind me, recording. I didn't move for an hour. At minute 47, the air behind me shivered, like a draft, but no windows open. Then a faint sound, not a clap, not a knock. Breathing. So close it fogged the camera lens for a few seconds, and when I turned around, nothing was there. But in the playback, for just one frame, a figure stands behind me, face blurred, mouth open, as if mid-sentence. I checked all the cameras before bed, checked the attic, the cellar, the bathroom. Nothing. Then I went into the guest room I never use, sat down, looked up, and there, carved into the ceiling in shaky capital letters, "Mark is the next listener." Chapter 8. Mark, who wouldn't listen. Mark arrived just after 1 p.m. His car looked out of place, shiny, rented, something meant for airports and coffee shops, not gravel roads and broken mailboxes. He stepped out and stared up at the house like it was something sick, like he could smell the rot before he got to the door. "You weren't exaggerating," he said, running a hand through his hair. "This place looks wrong." He wore sunglasses. I remember that clearly, because when he finally took them off, his eyes lingered too long on the second-floor window. He asked, "Is someone else staying here?" "No," I said. "Why?" He didn't answer. I gave him the tour, left out the details, the monkey, the clapping, the attic. I just showed him the rooms and said vague things like, "It's been noisy," or "I've been feeling off." He nodded along. Mark's a therapist now, deals with trauma patients. He asked if I'd checked for mold, carbon monoxide, black water leaks. I told him yes, but we both knew it wouldn't matter. You don't explain this with fungus. I didn't tell him about the message carved in the ceiling. Mark is the next listener. Not yet. That evening, I offered to drive him back to the motel. He said no. Said he'd stay the night. "You shouldn't be alone out here," he said. I should have insisted, but the truth is, I didn't want to be alone either. At 9 p.m. he asked the first real question. "What happened to your tooth?" I hadn't noticed. I ran my tongue along the back molars and felt a new gap, smooth, bloodless. My stomach dropped. "Didn't know it was gone," I said. Mark narrowed his eyes. "You sure you're sleeping?" I wanted to laugh. I hadn't slept in weeks. I told him the truth, finally. "There's something in this house. It listens. It watches. And every time I try to leave, it finds a way to come with me." He asked if it had a name. I said no, just a sound. I made up the guest bed for him, left the door cracked, like a kid afraid of the dark. He didn't seem afraid, not really, but before he turned in, he asked me again, "This monkey, you're sure you didn't imagine it?" And I said nothing, because saying it aloud gives it power. That's the one thing I do know. 3:11 a.m., I woke to clapping, not distant, not muffled, in the house. I rose from bed slowly, no flashlight, no phone, just the house and my ears. I passed the bathroom, light off, past the stairs, no movement. But as I reached the guest room, I stopped. The door was wide open, Mark's bed was empty, sheets kicked back, still warm, and there, on the floor, a tape recorder, running. I played it, my voice again, reading something I didn't remember writing. First it listens, then it waits, then it picks. It doesn't need to kill you, it needs you to speak for it. Then a second voice, "Marks, this is ridiculous, I don't hear anything." Silence. Then a fourth clap, sharp, echoing, followed by something soft, a breath. And then the sound of skin sliding across wood, dragging. I found Mark an hour later, in the attic. He was standing in front of the pulpit, perfectly still, his face pale, blank, eyes unfocused. He didn't speak, just held his hands out in front of him, palms up, like he was waiting for something to be placed in them. On the ground beside him, the monkey, symbols gone, its hands curled into fists, no movement. But its mouth was open, and inside, where there should have been wind-up gears, was another tooth, still wet. I called to Mark. I stepped forward, but he blinked slowly and whispered, "I didn't hear it." I reached out to touch his shoulder, and in the quietest voice I've ever heard, he said, "Don't make it clap again." By morning, Mark was gone. Not just missing, gone. No footprints, no tyre marks. The bed was untouched, the guest room perfectly made, like he'd never been there at all. Except, on the pillow, his sunglasses, and a note folded neatly beneath them, "I see it now." Chapter 9. The Clap That Wasn't Heard. I left Mark's sunglasses on the windowsill, unopened. They're still there, catching dust. A part of me thinks he left them on purpose, like he knew I'd need something to prove he was ever real. That any of this is real. I haven't spoken to anyone since. No calls, no messages. I don't even know if my phone works anymore. I haven't tried it in days. When I step outside, there's no signal. When I listen to the radio, it's just static. The air feels heavier than it used to. The clouds hang lower. Every sound carries farther, and the trees never quite settle. I don't think the house is haunted. I think I am. I found a new cassette. Inside the fridge, tucked into a carton of eggs that I hadn't bought. The label just said, "Replay." I almost didn't press play, but some part of me knew I didn't have a choice. Not really. It started with static. Then the monkeys clapping. Slow, soft. But this time it wasn't alone. There was breathing. Then crying. Mine. On the tape I say, "I think I did something to Mark." I don't remember saying that, but the voice is mine, and it's not lying. I checked the attic again. The pulpit's gone, vanished like it had never been there. In its place, a circle of dust, as though it had been lifted straight off the floor by something with no hands. In the centre, a Bible, newer, leather-bound, not Raymond's. This one had a sticky note on the cover. "You're the last sermon." I opened it. Every page was blank except the first, written in black ink, large block letters. "Stop listening. The monkey's not trying to be hidden anymore. It's waiting out in the open. I found it on the porch swing this morning, arms limp, eyes fixed on the woods. Its symbols were gone completely, no trace, but its mouth had changed again. Not open, just slightly parted as if mid-sentence. There were words inside, tiny words written along the edges of its inner jaw, too small to read. I took a photo with my phone, enlarged it, and there they were. "You don't have to listen if you obey." I don't think it claps anymore because it doesn't need to. The clapping was to get attention. Now it has mine. Now it waits for instructions. And deep down, I think I already know what it wants. Tonight I checked the basement one last time. The light bulb burned out immediately when I pulled the chain. I used a flashlight. On the wall were more tally marks. Hundreds now, all red, all vertical. No groups of 5, just a forest of single lines floor to ceiling, and beneath them a question scrawled in charcoal. How many did you make listen? I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for my flashlight to die, long enough for the scratching in the walls to start again. I thought it was mice. Then I realized it was the sound of fingernails, tapping, syncopated, like clapping, but quieter, closer. I checked the front door, locked. The windows, all shut. Still I could hear something moving through the house, low to the ground, dragging limbs, breathing like someone choking on sleep. I backed into the kitchen. The monkey sat on the counter, as usual. But something was wrong. It had its arms raised, not in greeting, in preparation, like it had never been broken, like the symbols had never left. But now, instead of metal, it held my hands, not literal ones, but exact copies. Lifelike, flesh-coloured, veined, and they were cupped, waiting. I turned on every light in the house. I opened every door, every window. I said out loud, "I'm not afraid of you." And something whispered back, "You were never supposed to be." I checked my voicemail on a whim. I hadn't touched my phone in days. There was one new message, unknown number. Timestamp for 5 minutes earlier. I pressed play. Mark's voice, slow, flat. "Don't stop listening. Not until it claps one more time." Click. I stared at the phone, looked around the house. Silent, still, no monkey, nothing. And then, in the distance, behind the walls, a muffled clap, just one. And it wasn't for me, it was mine. Chapter 10. Last Listener. I didn't sleep the night after the clap. I don't know if that matters anymore. The light in the kitchen stayed on until dawn, but it didn't make me feel safer. Brightness doesn't keep things away here, it just sharpens their outlines. It makes you see what's always been standing in the corner. When the sun came up, the monkey was gone. But the hands remained, still resting on the counter, knuckles turned up, lifeless, palms open like they were begging, and in the centre of one of them, a fresh line of chalk, one tully, a new beginning, or maybe a new count. I spent the morning packing. Not clothing, not essentials, tapes, photos, drawings, the tooth, the crayon sketch from the cellar. I loaded it all into a cardboard box and sealed it with duct tape. Wrote a note on the top. If you find this, don't play the tapes. Don't listen. Burn everything, especially the monkey. Then I buried it in the woods, 3 feet down, under the same tree where I buried the broken monkey weeks ago. I didn't hear birds. I didn't hear wind. But the earth breathed. I thought about leaving. For real this time. Just walking until the road turned into something else. Hitching a ride. Letting the next chapter of my life begin somewhere anonymous, empty, clean. Then I remembered the motel. The gas leak that wasn't a gas leak. The cassette that played without batteries. And Mark's sunglasses, still sitting in the windowsill, collecting dust in a room no one else ever used. You can't run from something once it's inside you. And the monkey? It's not a curse you inherit. It's a role. A job. I found the monkey again in the attic just after dusk, sitting at the centre of a new ring of chalk. This time, the circle wasn't alone. Inside the ring were names. Mine. Raymond's. And now, Mark's. 27 in total, a perfect circle of listeners. A congregation. I didn't touch it. I just sat across from it, legs folded, back straight, waiting. The house was silent except for the sound of wood groaning above and below, and somewhere, very faintly, the tick-tick-tick of something winding up. I whispered, "What do you want?" The monkey didn't move, but the chalk circle shifted. A new word appeared in the centre, as if written by an invisible hand. Listen. I picked up the last tape recorder, the one I hadn't touched. The label read Final Sermon. I didn't want to, but I pressed play. Raymond's voice came through, shaky, tired. If you're hearing this, it means I failed. I tried to end it. I tried to outlive it. I thought silence would save me. He coughed, paused. But silence doesn't protect you. It just makes you easier to hear. I don't know what it is. A spirit, a thought, a sound given form. But I know what it needs. It needs the clapping to continue. It needs an audience. And if you're still listening, then you're the last listener. Until you find the next. Click. There's no point pretending anymore. I know what's coming. The clapping has to continue. And if I don't pass it on, it doesn't go away. It just turns inward. It rots you from the inside, like it did to Raymond, like it did to Mark. It's 3:11 a.m. I'm sitting in the study, back straight, hands in my lap. The monkey is across from me, eyes fixed. And on the table between us, a mirror, not a fancy one, just a simple handheld one. I turn it so I can see myself, and there I am, still human, still me. But I don't blink. Not once. The house groans again, and then I hear it. Clap, behind me, louder than any before. I close my eyes and smile, because I know now what Raymond meant. There's no end to the sound. There's only the moment it chooses a new direction. The next morning the house is empty, all the doors open, the windows wide, and in the centre of the study table, a tape recorder. Press play. This is for you. You found this. That means it's begun again. Clap if you're listening. You've made it to the end. But in stories like this, endings are never quite. Endings. The house still breathes. The woods still listen. And the monkey, it's still counting. Somewhere, right now, it's clapping for someone new. Maybe even you. If you enjoyed this sleep story, leave the lights off a little longer. Subscribe for more tales that whisper in the dark, and don't let go. And remember, if you ever hear clapping in the night, don't turn around, just listen.